What's up, guys? Welcome to the Put Me In Coach podcast,
where we go beyond the headlines and deep dive everything NFL.
I'm Ian.
And I'm Andy.
Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you so much. What's going on, brother? How are you?
How we doing? I'm good, man. How are you doing?
I'm fantastic, honestly. I mean, it's 4th of July Eve, so we're both kind of gearing up for a little bit of time off. We had a little time to do our research on this team, and I'm enjoying the very real Los Angeles heat right now in July. I'm sure you're enjoying the Michigan heat.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's here, baby. It's here in full force. It is shorts weather all day. You know, you got the shirt open, no tank underneath it. It's just hot and sticky, but whatever. We got fans, we got ACs in the house. We're living good. I gotta remember in these moments how terrible Michigan can be from December to May sometimes. So I'm taking it. Yeah.
No, I'm with you. And it's kind of a cool episode in a way, and kind of why I touched on the weather and why the locations of us is we're kind of doing a crossover episode, right? Like we're staying in LA where I live, and we're talking about our hometown hero coach where you live and where I grew up. So Mr. Jim Harbaugh, local legend, and obviously we're doing the Los Angeles Chargers.
We did that. Pull it down.
Pull it down. Pull it down. We did that.
Yeah, weird guy.
Super weird guy. Weird guy.
So I figured it out. Why hot dogs come in packages of 10 and hot dog buns come in packages of 8. See, the thing is that life doesn't always work out according to plan. So be happy with what you got. So you can always get a hot dog.
But just a guy who, I don't know. It's like he's almost he's the NFL's Quentin Tarantino. You know what I mean? He's like he's just really good at what he does, but everybody's just kind of like, you know what? He's an odd guy, but like, man, the results are there, and that's just kind of how I feel about him. It's just like, I mean, super weird guy. I'd take him on my team any day, any single day. I don't care who you are.
Yep. So we're going to get into it. We're going to get into Justin Herbert. We're going to get into this roster. We're going to get into this weapons or lack thereof, the defense, kind of what we think. And without further ado, let's roll the clip, baby.
Here.
Right, I got his flame sword.
All right, we're back with the artist formerly known as the San Diego Superchargers, now known as the Los Angeles Chargers. Real quick, guys, please do like and subscribe. But more importantly, if there are any Chargers fans, all 6 of you guys watching this, let me know if you guys are into this LA Chargers thing, because I'm not. But I'm not a San Diego guy. I spent some time in San Diego. I love the area, but I just, as an outsider, I'm not a big fan of the LA Chargers thing. I kind of miss the San Diego thing. What do you think about that? You into it?
I hate it. I hate it so much. Well, I hate it from the standpoint of like I'm in Detroit. I'm a diehard fan of a small market team. So the idea of like the NFL powers that be like ripping a team away from me. It's like if they rip the Lions away from me and just like move them to Chicago, and they're like, well, we just want another team in like a bigger market. It's like, well, no, but that's my team. Like you can't do that.
But you can't do this to me. I started this company. You know how much I sacrificed?
You know what I mean? I can't imagine how like St. Louis fans feel. I think that's even worse. Even the Chargers fans, you know, they can at least, they're still in the same state, and they can at least like drive to a game and go see it. You know what I mean? Like it sucks that the name changed, but it's. I mean, what is San Diego like? 2.5 hours away from you right now
with traffic?
Something like
I mean,
that.
it's less. I've been there a handful of times. It's like a 2-hour
so
drive.
It's like moving the Lions to Grand Rapids. It's like, okay, it's not the worst thing in the world, but like I don't know. You look at like the Rams, and it's like you guys moved across the country, and you guys are in a whole different state now. Like, how do I even root for you? You know? No, but I hate it. I you know me, dude. I'm Midwest as it comes, dude. I like my small market teams. I got love for them, and I hate that the Chargers moved to LA. And I think I think everybody on the Chargers except for the Spanos family hates that they moved to LA. So.
Yeah, it's just not it, man. It's not it.
No, it's not.
I genuinely, and San Diego's a cool area. So, and they had that song, right? The San Diego Superchargers, right. San Diego Chargers. Anyway, I wanted to start with last season. Chargers fans, yeah, I've hit that last note. I've been needing to cough for like 5. I never should have tried it. I've been needing to cough for like 5 minutes. It was just right there, and I tried to pop that off.
I know.
It was never going to work. I can hit it, by the way, for the audience. I promise I can. I'm going to try it later.
Are you saying I can't? Are you saying I can't? Are you saying I can't do it?
But last year, I'm sure it's a year that a lot of Chargers fans would rather forget. It's a year that I'd rather forget, to be honest, because I've always kind of been into the Chargers, man. They've always had cool uniforms, and I was a big LT fan growing up. Yeah. And I actually met LT recently, like a couple of years ago, and it was like so cool to me. But last year was one of those years where everything kind of fell apart, right? They were holding everything together with glue, and it just didn't hold up. The flex tape broke. Staley gets fired. Telesco gets fired. At the end of the year, the team moves on from Keenan Allen, from Mike Williams, from Austin Ekeler, from Gerald Everett, like all of these staple pieces. But you finished 5-12. You finished last in the division, and really, it was never on the table for them last year, honestly. I mean, and some people like to kind of cope and be like, well, Herbert got hurt, but they were 5-7 with Herbert before the injury. This was a Staley problem. This was an organizational problem. It partially was a roster problem with age, but I just, it's been a bummer to kind of see this organization waste what I think is one of the premier quarterbacks in this game right now from a talent perspective. But there is light at the end of the tunnel, because moving out of this year and moving on from these players and moving on from this coach and this GM and kind of the same old, this team took a hard pivot, and they hired really, we call him a friend of the show, but he's kind of a father of the show. I mean, he is Ann Arbor football. I mean, he is. For those of you who don't know, we both grew up in Ann Arbor, where Jim came from. Jim went to the same middle school that Andy went to. His parents know Jim. I mean, he's tight. My sister used to work with him a bunch when she was spending time in Ann Arbor and working for the university a little bit. We are very familiar with Jim, and being Michigan fans, it's bittersweet. But we're both really excited to see what he does in the NFL. And before I hand it off to you, one thing that I've come to realize with Jim is two things. It's not going to happen right away the way you want it to, but the change itself is going to happen day one. And I was listening to Khalil Mack talking, and I was listening to Justin Herbert talking when we were kind of doing notes for this team. Culture's different already. The vibe is different 100%. Already. People are buying in the building already. And we'll get to the roster. We'll get to some of these pieces and kind of my lack of belief in this team making a run this season. Spoiler alert, that is going to be a theme of the show. But, man, seeing these guys talking about Jim, seeing these guys get animated and get excited, I'm getting fired up right now. And he's not even my coach. Like, I was having flashbacks to the last few years in Michigan, and he started off pretty badly in relative to expectations at U of M for us. But something switched when he had that fourth loss to Ohio State, and he pushed through to another side. And you can see that we're in a new era of Jim Harbaugh where he is fully himself. He's lost. He's had valleys, and I think that he is going to get this team fired up to play. And I don't think what you saw last year under Staley with this team, frankly, kind of giving up and playing soft football is ever going to happen with Jim Harbaugh. So I wanted to get your take on it because I don't know. It's just exciting. I think it's really cool that for fans.
Well, if you refer back to our Raiders video, I say about Max Crosby, it's the art of self-reflection. The same applies to Jim Harbaugh. You just mentioned, right? It's losing to Ohio State over and over and over, not being able to get over that hump, and us as Michigan fans getting kind of bubbling up, and a couple of years in there, it's like, oh well, the call was bad, or it was this, it was that, and then it was like a couple of blowouts to end it. It was like, all right, dude, you might have to get up out of here. And he made an adjustment. He reaches out to his brother. He calls, he brings in Mike McDonald. Then he, after that, brings in Jesse Mintor, and he revamps this defense, and he gets acclimated with what the times were calling for, right? He whatever he was doing was not working. But the reality of Jim Harbaugh is that he's a winner, dude. I mean, he's 49-22-1 in the NFL in his tenure in the NFL, and he's 133-52 in the NCAA. I mean, he's going to win you 70% of your games no matter what. That's just what's going to happen with Jim Harbaugh. As you said before, I'm with you on that. I don't think that they're going to see a ton of success this year, but this year is the foundation year. This year is the year that they're going to play really, tough, hard-nosed football. The trenches are going to be important here. It's going to be a lot of running. It's going to be a lot of probably a lot of close games that you ultimately probably lose just because of lack of weapons. But you're going to win some games, too, that you definitely shouldn't. And that's just the Jim Harbaugh effect. He comes into, I think it was a 5-11 terrible Niners team, takes them to the NFC Championship in his first year, goes to the Super Bowl in his second year, goes to the NFC Championship again in his third year. Fourth year, he's fired or I guess, he quits, whatever. It sounds like him and the owner were kind of doing this. But it was nothing but success, dude. And that's just Jim Harbaugh football. It's everywhere he's gone, he's succeeded one way or another. It took a little longer at Michigan, but it was quick at Stanford. It was quick at San Diego State. It was quick, it was quick in these other spots. And you pair that with a team that already has, in my opinion, the two of the biggest factors. You have your quarterback and you have your left tackle and you have your right tackle. So that's an added on bonus. What now you need to do is kind of get those filler pieces in. You got to get some weapons. You got to get, you could argue you have your franchise edge. I don't think you do anymore. I think he's a little, he's on the back nine. But there might be a resurgence here with Bosa, with Mack, on a Jim Harbaugh staff. So, I mean, I don't know. I know that you aren't crazy about their offensive coordinator, and I think that is going to play into a lot of why this year is probably going to fall a little flat. But elaborate on that for us a little bit, because I am curious to hear your thoughts on why you didn't love the hire, because I know a lot of people did love the hire.
A lot of people love the hire, and real quick, I don't think it's all bad. This team is going to run the football a lot better than they did last year. But I think if that was the route you were going to go from a roster standpoint, I would have liked to see one of these elite running backs be signed, whether it be Saquon, Josh Jacobs, Derrick Henry, one of these guys. I understand these are vets and you're not in win now. I just don't feel like J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards are game changers for me. But because of the tackles, particularly Joe Alt and his run blocking, and because of what Greg Roman can do in an offensive with his running scheme, this team will run the ball a lot better, and they couldn't run the damn ball for anything last year. I mean, it was a nightmare trying to run the football last year. So in that sense, it will be improved, and I think it's important. For me, this is an example of Jim coming into the NFL and going, it's been a while. I want my buddy here. They had success in the past, but it was the past. And Greg Roman had success with Colin Kaepernick, Tyrod Taylor, and Lamar Jackson in extremely run-heavy, quarterback run-heavy offenses. That's not what this team's been for a decade. I'm okay with the pivot, but I think it is a bit of an example of square peg, round hole with a quarterback like Justin Herbert, who you're paying $50 million a year to and wants to throw the ball 45 times a game. So I think there's going to be some growing pains. We'll get into the offensive roster in a minute, but Greg Roman and Jim Harbaugh together, and Greg Roman on his own, has run the ball at a top 5 clip in the NFL every year he's been an OC. So they're going to be handing the ball off a lot. What Greg Roman hasn't proven is that on 3rd and long, with the game, in the balance, can you scheme up a passing game that's really going to turn the corner and win this thing for you? Can you elevate Herbert to another level? And that's where Jim, I think, is going to have to get a little more hands-on. I don't expect Greg Roman to be the OC forever. I just think it's inevitable. And, it's not a great indictment that Lamar Jackson improved as a passer pretty dramatically last year under Todd Monken in his first season. I mean, he did. We've never seen Lamar pass the ball very well, frankly. You guys can go off in the comments and tell me, Lamar's always been a top 5 passer. No, he hasn't. And last year, he took a huge step forward in the passing game with the departure of Greg Roman. So it's something that I worry about a little bit, because it feels like you're trying to make a jacket fit because you like the jacket, not because it looks flattering on you. You know what I mean? And I just think Jim is kind of doing the classic example of, I'm just going to this is my guy and this is the guy I want, so I'm just going to force this into happening. You know what I mean? So we'll see. I could be wrong, but I'm not a huge Greg Roman guy. And I just don't know if this team has the roster yet to make that happen the way that Greg Roman really likes to. This isn't quite San Francisco.
No, it isn't. It isn't San Francisco yet, and I say yet because I do believe it can be, right. I mean, I touched on it a second ago. You have, for a Greg Roman offense, for a Jim Harbaugh offense, you have what is their 2 most important pieces, which is the left tackle and the right tackle, and you have a couple of running backs who definitely aren't trash, but definitely aren't world beaters. But what I want to touch on now is the kind of the elephant in the room, which is the quarterback. $52 million a year, all the talent in the world, hasn't really done anything. And for me personally, that leash is starting to get real. I'm not loving it anymore. It's at a certain point something's got to give, I guess is what I'm trying to get at. Something has to give eventually. And again, I don't think this year is going to be the year that we finally see it, but under Jim Harbaugh, there's no excuses, right? I look at Justin Herbert and I think to myself, okay, who does this kid remind me of? He reminds me of somebody, and I can't, for forever I couldn't put my thumb on it. I'm like, uber talented, has all everything in play, right? You have Keenan Allen, who's an elite wide receiver. You have Austin Ekeler, who's a great running back. You have Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack on the ends. You have J.C. Jackson, and you have Melvin. What's got to give? What's got to give? What's got to give? And then you think, oh, okay, well, he plays in the conference with Pat Mahomes. So winning that conference is not always going to be easy, but you should make a wild card game. And then you wonder, okay, how do we get here? Yada yada yada. And then I remember, oh yeah, that's right. I watched Matthew Stafford play in Detroit for 12 years, and that is who he reminds me of. He's a guy who's going to, deal with inconsistent offensive line play, inconsistent defenses, inconsistent key pieces being injured all the time. This revolving door of coaching, whether it be head coaches or offensive coordinators constantly coming in and out. He reminds me a lot of Matthew Stafford 2.0. And the positive of that is that once Stafford got a real staff around him, McVay, obviously you got Cooper Kupp and and all those guys. Andrew Whitworth was his center or a left tackle, or what was Whitworth? He's a left tackle, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You get Aaron Donald on the other side. You get Jalen Ramsey on the other side. It all came together, and he won a Super Bowl. And that's what I think the expectation for Herbert should be in the next 5 years, is go win a Super Bowl, because Jim Harbaugh is going to build that team to put around. You're not going to deal with the Matt Patricias. You're not dealing with the Jim Schwartz and the Jim Caldwells. You got the guy. You got the guy very, very early on in your career. You can forget about the Anthony Lynn's and the Brandon Staley's. You can forget about those guys, because right now you have the coach who is either going to unlock you and make you a Hall of Fame player, or you are going to be remembered as a guy who kind of fell short his entire career. And that's the barrel of the gun that Stafford was looking down before the trade to Los Angeles, at the expense of my own Detroit Lions. It was for years he just could not overcome. And that's what we've seen in Herbert, right? You have a 28 to nothing lead in Jacksonville in the wild card game. And granted, it's not his fault that his defense couldn't stop, a nosebleed in that second half. But again, he didn't put them in position to just keep running up the score. He kind of fell short that second half. So it's hard to say where I can place Justin Herbert, because a lot of people will say, "Oh, he's top 5," but I think he's more like in the 8 to 12 range, because again, you have to win something in this league. This league is all about getting to a Super Bowl, right? I don't care how talented you are in the regular season. You have to succeed in the playoffs, and you have to give your team the best opportunity to win a Super Bowl. And I have yet to see him do that with a lot of talent on his roster. Am I tripping, or is that?
Yeah, no. The thing is, people hate quarterback wins. They hate that. Every time. It's become the most polarized. It's like everything's a pendulum, right? And back in the day, it was overemphasized, right? You would be like, "Oh, Jimmy Garoppolo's a star." It's like, calm down. He's just a winner. And now it's become this thing where it's like, winning's not a quarterback stat. Winning's not a quarterback stat. The truth is somewhere in the middle. And the reality is, I think Justin's a young player. He hasn't had great coaching. I think he's had bad coaching, frankly. When you look at the list of OCs and head coaches that he's dealt with since entering the league, it's not great. Actually, it's bad. Most of those guys don't have jobs anymore. But that being said, I'm with you. He's not lacking toughness. He's lacking this moxie and this and this fearlessness sometimes in the big moments. Yes. And I think people love citing the sack rate of not getting sacked a bunch, and people love citing the interceptions and the completion percentage, and it's impressive that he doesn't turn the ball over a bunch and take a bunch of sacks. But Joe Burrow talked about sacks years ago when he was asked about you take too many sacks, and he was like, honestly, I don't view sacks as this big bad thing. To me, I would rather Herbert take a couple more sacks and throw a couple more picks every year if it meant I felt like he was ripping that thing and running down the field with gusto. I
totally agree.
Yeah, because remember the rib thing? He hurt his ribs and he played through it.
No, he's a tough kid.
Yeah,
but he still plays. He plays scared. He plays scared. And Stafford played scared for many years.
But I think to give him a break, I think that was coached into him at some point early on. I don't know if it was Lynn. I don't know if it was who was it? Was it Lombardi they had for a while? I
believe so. Yeah.
I don't know which coach it was. It might have even been as early as Oregon. I think somewhere along the lines he was coached into this don't make mistakes thing. And I wish he would give a little bit of that up and just put just a touch, not all the way, but just a touch of Josh Allen, Brett Favre in him, because he's got the ability to be that guy.
I think he will. I think we're going to see that this year, because that's how Jim is a little bit more. You know what I mean? But and to be fair to Herbert, because I know it sounds like I'm pooping all over the kid, and I'm not. I think he's my expectation for him is so high that I can no longer watch this team not succeed, right? But the thing with him is that you, just like you said, you have to rip it a little bit more. But I think the the problem that has been coached into him, as you've said, is the fact that he's had really bad defenses too, and that's where I will defend him, is like you're constantly in shootouts. So there's no room to go in there and throw an interception because, you know, you look at the Lions game last year is a perfect example, right? It was just like touchdown, 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 and we just ended up with the ball last, and that's just how the cookie crumbled. And Keenan Allen was unbelievable in that game. Justin Herbert was great in that game. That's what you get into a lot with this Chargers team, is you get into these shootouts, and he's great at it. He's just, again, it's very much like the Lions with Stafford. It's a lot of shootouts. It's a lot of like fake comebacks. It's a lot of this. It's a lot of that. So, I don't know. I don't want to beat up on the kid too much because I think he's one of the most, he's 6'6", 260 pounds. Like what, like, are you serious? And
he's lean.
That's a Madden created player. Yeah. 236 pounds. I'm sorry. I said 60, 236, but still, though. I know he's a freak.
Not like Big Ben where it's like, oh, he's carrying this extra weight and he's kind of like overweight.
He can run.
Like cut. Honestly, I don't want you to qualify it because I think what you're saying is amazing. I think what we're both kind of saying is like, he's got the ability to sit at the table with what I call the big four: Lamar, Joe, Patrick, and Josh. He's got the talent to sit right there with those guys. I just feel like what you're saying and what I believe to be true as well, he's been fraudulently put at that table by a lot of fans when he's missing something that those guys have. He hasn't shown yet that he can do. He hasn't won the division. He hasn't won a playoff game. He hasn't gone on a run. He hasn't. What's the defining moment of Justin Herbert, right? It's sort of like, that game where he had four touchdowns and 400 yards. And it's like, well, what was that again? They're like, week 6 against the Raiders and 2 years ago, remember? And it's like, I don't remember. Like, who won that game? And it's like, the Chargers lost, but it was, he had 4 touchdowns. It's like, okay. I mean, I'm with you. I don't think it's hating on your end, bro. I think it's excitement, and it's like you're like almost like you're such a fan of his game that you want to see.
100%.
You want to see the next step, and I think we will with Jim. I do.
Yeah.
Not right away, but eventually.
Again, it's just to reiterate. It's like you just said. He's been given a seat at this table, and I have to. That's a tough table to be at. You have to critique it, man. I got to see that deep playoff run. I got to see that MVP. I got to see something. I can look at the rest of them and go, well, okay, Josh Allen's won the division multiple times. Lamar Jackson has multiple MVPs now. Joe Burrow's been to a Super Bowl, and Mahomes has 3. What do you do? You know what I mean? I was offensive player of the month. It's like, get out of here. I was offensive rookie of the year in 2020. Okay. Yeah. I'm with you, man.
No, it gets old. I mean, it gets old, and ultimately we're just fans of great players, so I think that's what it is. One thing that I think will hold him back a little bit, it's kind of weird, right? It's like the opposite thing. Like, it's been coaching holding him back, but he's had good weapons, and now it's kind of the opposite this year.
Yeah, it is.
I wanted to touch on this weapons group, but first, I wanted to get your thoughts, and I'm going to kind of ask it open-ended. Do you think, because it's a guy that we both really liked coming into the draft, do you think that Ladd McConkey is going to be enough? Can Ladd McConkey be enough to be the one on this offense that they so desperately need right now, given the departures?
Yes and no. I think he'll thrive in this offense because it's a Greg Roman offense. It's not very complicated. You know what I mean? Like, there's not a ton of like passing schemes that are in there that are going to get super crazy and complicated. It's probably quite easy for him, especially as like such a good route runner that he is. I think it'll be pretty easy for him to come from a Kirby Smart system to a Greg Roman system. Where I say no is like I don't see him being a high end one. It's hard to say. He could be. I mean, you could see this like Amon-Ra type jump from him over the next few years where he's just like so good out of the slot, and he's Cooper Kupp comes to mind as well. Like those guys can obviously be ones, but even still, I mean, Amon-Ra was first team All-Pro, and you constantly see this like he's a slot boy, he's a slant merchant, it's like people don't respect the slot boys. So I think that yes, he can be a one, quiet as kept, but I do think that they are going to need somebody on the outside to kind of even it out, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I mean, the reason why I asked you is, when we were going over this, I've been really spoiled for choice lately. I mean, lately we've done like the Texans and the Packers. And
Yeah.
I mean, I hit you up and I was like, I feel like this group stinks.
I'm ruined. I have nothing left except Spider-Man.
It's like, and I know it's been an obvious talking point this offseason of like, oh, they're screwed. Why would they get rid of? I'm not so mad that they got rid of these guys. I think you had to move on from Ekeler, Mike Williams, and Keenan Allen eventually. And I think this was the year to do it with a new coach and a new scheme. It's just time. Those guys are all long in the tooth, injury-prone guys. But, you're essentially, as it stands, asking Jordan Palmer to be your one. He's only ever been a 3, and he's not special. Or you're asking Quentin Johnston to be your one, and he's, so far been a full-blown bust who actually can't catch the football with his hands, which is a crazy thing to watch, but it's real.
It is real.
You know what I mean? Like, we were watching him last year.
I do.
Remember that play against Green Bay, and you're like, oh my God, he dropped it? Like, they would have won that game. And
fully.
It's hard to watch, right? And then you've got Lad McConkey. And the reason why I asked about Lad McConkey is because it's a guy, that's sort of cool to me because he looks like he could be in my family. Like, he's kind of a combination of like me and my brother. He looks like he could be our sibling.
Combination.
Combination. But he's a guy I love. I mean, the route running's amazing. He's not just a pure slot guy. He's got a little Tank Dell in him where he can play that small outside receiver thing too. He's got the speed. He's got the quickness, and he's got the nuance to his game of a veteran, right? But I don't know that he can be a one. You know what I'm saying? It's sort of like what I would like Lad McConkey to be is, like a team like Dallas is a team I would have liked him to get drafted to, where it's like you got CeeDee Lamb there, like go cook as a 2 for a while until you can develop. Like I look at this group of running backs too, and also real quick before I give it back to you, the tight end group of Hayden Hurst and Will Dissly, right? Where it's like, I mean, forget about it. I mean, I look at this weapon group and I just go, who's the go-to guy next season? And it's the Greg Roman complaint. It's everything where it's like you're doing a teardown job, but in this league, talent matters. Who's the go-to guy on 3rd and 7? And for all of you guys saying the Chiefs last year, well, last time I checked, Travis Kelce was in a Chiefs uniform last year. This team doesn't have anything like that on this roster right now. And so I think it's going to be an adjustment this year. I'm excited about Lad McConkey, but I don't know that he can be dominant enough to take over that job. And the other guys, I just don't believe in that much. All the guys that we're questioning who's going to be the go-to guy. So it's something I'm concerned about, and I think fans who are concerned about are rightfully concerned is all I wanted to say. But I'll pass it over to you.
I was just gonna chime in real quick with the positive about Lad McConkey is that due to the fact that, which we just talked about, Herbert doesn't like to put the ball in harm's way. So a lot of times he's kind of rolling out of the pocket and he becomes a bit of a check down Charlie for a lot of the games. He's not necessarily willing to step in the pocket and potentially take a sack or throw an interception because he's not throwing it downfield as much. He reverts a lot to like the middle of the field and to the outside, and that's where Lad McConkey is going to eat. So I think just based on his game and what we've seen from Herbert and what we know is it's kind of his comfort zone. It's a bit of a knock I have on him, but if you can make that a positive with a guy like Lad McConkey who can potentially go get you some yak after those little kind of check down Charlie passes, then it becomes a dub and it's like, well, okay, now you're unstoppable. So I could see him becoming that kind of dominant across the middle of the field wide receiver. I think he's going to have to be, frankly. I mean, I don't think there's no room for him to be even to be mid. Like, you're going to have to be very good because
he's being thrown into the fire for sure.
He's the only weapon. I mean, Quentin Johnston stinks and Josh Palmer is a great 3, but he's definitely not a 2 or a 1. And that's what you're asking him to be. And it's just not, it's just not it.
Yeah. But I wanted to pivot to the other side of the ball, and I wanted to start with a question because one of the big storylines this offseason with the free agency group and with Harbaugh and kind of the departures and the reset, if you will, of this Chargers team was, okay, they're moving on from all of the veteran offensive pieces, but they're keeping the edge. They're keeping the edge. They're keeping Khalil Mack off frankly, one of the best seasons of his career at 32 years old. And they're keeping Joey Bosa, who's shown a lot of flash, especially early in his career, but struggled with injuries. The interior of the defensive line is awful. Again, Poona Ford is their best defensive tackle, and I mean, who cares? It's a bad group. I listened. Yeah. Jesse Mintor is coming over with Jim, a guy who I totally believe in. I think he's going to do a great job coaching this team eventually. But I hear the coaching staff, and it's something I touched on at the beginning with this kind of square peg, round hole, ill-fitting jacket thing of being like, we're gonna dominate the trenches. We're gonna dominate what does Harbaugh say? We're gonna dominate today with a spirit, with a tenacity unknown to mankind.
34 in the morning, woke up, staring straight at the ceiling, and said to myself, "It's not just another day; it's today." And maybe that's just another way of saying, attack this day with an enthusiasm unknown to mankind. But it was a great day.
Right, that whole thing, and it's like, I love the sentiment of it, but I was wondering where you were, particularly on what is being considered, frankly, the anchor of this defensive unit, which is the 1-2 punch of Mack and Bosa.
Yeah. I think I'll say it like this. I think the logic there from a coaching and GM standpoint of keeping these anchor pieces who are great leaders, great vets, and who at their height have been all pro level talent. I think that the idea of keeping them in-house just to kind of make this transition is very smart from a GM standpoint, right? Where I disagree with it is that I just don't see a ton of production coming out of these guys. And I hope, and this is not hate Chargers fans, I promise you, I hope that we see Joey Bosa be what Joey Bosa is supposed to be, because when he has shown himself to be healthy and elite, he's so fun to watch. But the reality is that he has not been healthy since 2021, and in the NFL, that's a very long time. You're coming off of 2 seasons where you've missed a majority of the season both times. I do feel like a fresh start was needed for him in particular. Not so much Mack. I mean, Mack's coming off of, like you said, probably his best year ever. He had 17 sacks, and it's 6 in one game against the Raiders. And I believe it was like week 4. So he kind of showed out last year. But Bosa, it's like I would have loved to see him go to another potentially contending team, and not like selfishly, I really wanted to see him in Detroit, because you can kind of teach a guy like Aiden Hutchinson, and you're not so much reliant on being the number 1 edge. You can kind of be the 2, and you don't have to push your body so hard. And I know that they were in talks with them about potentially acquiring him, and it just felt like it was time for Joey in particular to move on. That being said, he didn't. They kept him here, and that's fine. And they have a new strength and conditioning coach who is awesome, by the way. He's awesome. He got those boys last year in Ann Arbor ready, and they were a physical, tough team. So I hope that he can work his magic with Bosa and really make it happen. But it's all going to come down to health. It's all going to come down to health. If Joey and Khalil can stay healthy all year, the defense could be sneaky good. I mean, point blank period, they could be sneaky good. But if I'm a betting man, I see that you haven't been healthy since 2021, and you're about to be 33 years old, and I just don't love it. I don't love what we're walking into. So that's just kind of my take on it. I think it's very boomer bust is where I end up with these edges. Very boomer bust.
Yeah. I that's exactly the assessment that I came away with, to be perfectly honest with you. It's an interesting group. I think my fear is exactly what you said. It's not a talent fear whatsoever. It's washed by injury and washed by age. If those guys can be non-washed and just maybe a little cleaned off by age and by an injury history, because we're never going to see what Bosa really could have been because he spent a lot of his prime injured. That's the reality. It's bad news. It sucks and it's sad, but it's the reality. If he can stay healthy this year, we could see a really good player. And if Khalil Mack can also stay healthy, I mean, Khalil Mack's 33 now. I mean, it's the clock is ticking. And, another guy to mention in that linebacking group is Denzel Perryman, who's very good, but he's 31. So you have no interior defensive line, and you have a linebacker and two edges that are all injury prone traditionally on one side, and then, over the age of 30. So I'm a little concerned about it, and I don't know that it's going to quite be what people want it to be. I love the drafting of Junior Colson, but he's going to be a rookie. I really wanted to touch very briefly before we get out of here on this secondary. It's another unit that I'm a little I'm questioning. I don't think it's going to be a bad group, but I'm wondering there's a lot of unknowns for me. And particularly, just to get the safeties out of the way, Derwin James is a stud. He's really not been what we wanted him to be the last couple of seasons. Chargers fans know this. But I'm wondering how much of that had to do with Staley and the way he was utilized and kind of the way that he was, it just felt like Staley didn't know what he was doing. This defense is horrible. So I'm wondering if a guy like Mintor can unlock Derwin James and kind of make him be this, using a Ravens reference, maybe a Kyle Hamilton type of guy, discount Kyle Hamilton. I think so too. So I kind of left him off my list. And at the other safety position, Alohi Gilman's also a very good player, actually better in coverage a lot of times than Derwin James is. So I actually think you've got some good safeties. It's more corner than I'm worried about. And Asante Samuel, to me, Asante Samuel Jr., I was a huge fan of his dad. And his son is a good player. He's just sort of a ball hawking, pick first, pass deflection first kind of corner who gives up coverage. Do you know what I'm saying? And ideally with a guy like that, very, very, very much in that category, which I love. I mean, you know me, I love a ball hawking corner. It's my favorite thing to watch is a corner that makes plays on the ball like that. Yeah. And he's a damn good player. I'm not knocking him. That the problem is that your opposite guy is Christian Fulton, who you brought over from Tennessee, who hasn't played a full season ever in his career. And he wasn't very good last year in Tennessee. So I'm just kind of worried about the coverage element of this defense on the back end. I think they're going to give up a lot of big plays, and I think they're going to be pretty porous. And it's partially why when I talk about the Chargers, I'm very excited for the coaching. I think Minter is going to help this defense be better than it was last year, which is frankly easy to do. No disrespect. But I'm a little bit worried about the roster and the personnel. I think they got a long way to go with a lot of these pieces, and I think the defense will be okay, but I don't know how they're going to stop the run, and I'm even a little worried about them kind of in the downfield coverage aspect of the passing game. Not so much the tackling aspect, but the coverage aspect. You know what I mean?
I do. No, I think they really need to. You're relying very heavily on 3 mid to late round draft picks they took. They took 2 cornerbacks in the fifth round, and then they took a D lineman out of Alabama, I think, in the 4th. So those are kind of your depth pieces, and they're all rookies. And Junior Colson, as you mentioned, right? They got him in the 3rd. So yep. It's a lot of youth, which I'm not saying. I mean, we've watched Jesse Minter the last 2 years, man. I if anybody can develop these guys, it's him. And I trust his ball knowledge, and I trust his ability to get this defense right. But that's just a lot riding on a lot of rookies. You got it. You almost have to have all 3 of those 4 hit no matter what. And really you need all 4 to hit.
Yep. And I think if I were to sum it up before we kind of close out to our final predictions, defensively as a whole, I fear that you're one injury away from being a really bad unit.
Sure.
An injury to Derwin,
sure.
an injury to Samuel Jr., an injury to Bosa, an injury to Mack. If any one of those four, God forbid, two of those four get hurt this year, your defense is cooked. And I'm a little bit worried.
You can pencil in Bosa right now.
That's the thing, right? You got
right
one
now.
guy who's 33. You got Pearman who's 31. Samuel's missed some games, but he's been, okay. Derwin James. I mean, it's just I'm a little worried about that. So they're gonna need to work on injury prevention because they are thin and they do not have a luxury of losing any of these guys for a massive stretch of time. But before we finish, I wanted to ask you kind of with everything being considered, and obviously we didn't get to touch on our guy Joe Alt too much, but he's amazing. I'll get that out of the way now before you guys get into comments. What about Joe Alt?
He's a rookie.
Yeah, he's a rookie. We don't know.
He should be great.
He's supposed to be really good. We'll see.
Yep.
I trust Harbaugh.
100%.
Yep. Where do you see this team? A lot of people are talking playoffs, dark horse playoff team.
No.
No. Where do you see them finishing record-wise this year?
Probably like 7 wins, probably 7 wins, 8 wins, somewhere in that. I think you're better than Denver. I think you're quietly a little worse than Vegas. You're not. Chiefs are winning that division, so we can get that out of the way right now. Yeah, I think 7, 8 wins, give or take. You're somewhere in that range. You're not going to be terrible. I don't think you're going to be as bad as you were last year, just because you'll have a healthy Herbert, you'll have a better O-line, but you have way worse weapons. And like we touched on earlier, Keenan Allen was awesome last year.
Yep.
And it's going to be much more running. I don't know what to think of J.K. Dobbins, to be honest with you. I mean, I think he's supposed to be really good, but he's on like his 25th ACL, so I feel like he's not gonna be any good. And Gus Edwards is fine, but he's just like he's as mid as they come. So I don't know. I don't see this team being world beaters. I do not see this team not in the AFC. I mean, that's a bold no for me. And hey, Chargers fans, maybe I'm wrong. And if I am, we can come back and clip it and make fun of me all day. I want you guys to be successful. I love your coach. But I think we have to wait a year till we're really talking playoffs.
Yeah, I love it. I'm with you right there at 8 and 9. I think if I'm going to title this video, I'm going to title it something along the lines of Rome wasn't built in a day.
Yeah, it's facts.
We hired Jim at Michigan, and the media and the whole state of Michigan and everybody wanted us to start beating Ohio State and making college football playoffs right away. Urban Meyer owned us for 5 years. That's what happened.
Yes,
instead.
he did.
But we got better. We got better quickly. Yep. I'm seeing a little bit of that because of who Jim is in the media right now. I'm seeing it already. I just saw Albert Breer on The Herd talking about playoffs. I think what we want as fans with the Harbaugh thing, and because we all love Herbert and he's just not been in the right situation coaching-wise, we want this team to be something next year.
100%.
I don't think next year's the year. I think you finish 8 and 9. I think you finish right there above Denver because I believe in your quarterback and your coach. I think you're going to win a couple of games, and Andy alluded to it earlier. You're going to win some games you weren't supposed to, but I just don't see playoffs. The good news is I wanted to mention right before we close out, they do have like nearly $100 million in cap space next year, allegedly. I think it's going to be a good draft next year and a good offseason, and let's circle back. But this is one long preseason game and figuring out what you have, and I think outside of Justin Herbert, I'm not really sure what that is yet. So That's it, man. And guys, please like, comment, subscribe. Thank you. Bolt up, baby. Let's go. Chargers.
Let's go.
San Diego Chargers. Told you.
There it is.
I had to circle back
Love
just
it.
so you know it. Yeah.
I hear you. I love it.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. Thanks, man.
Peace.